Organizations today find themselves at a crossroads with their virtualization strategies. While virtualization remains crucial for running critical workloads, the rise of cloud computing, evolving application development practices, and marketplace shifts are challenging traditional approaches. These challenges, such as unsustainable costs, limited innovation, and the complexity of migrating to the cloud, necessitate a fresh perspective. In this webinar, you'll learn about a powerful alternative that addresses these challenges, providing a robust path for modernizing infrastructure and data management while retaining and optimizing existing virtual machine workloads. Hello, and welcome to this video webcast titled Virtualizations at a Crossroads, Charting Your Path Forward, sponsored by Red Hat, Portworx, and CIO.com, and featuring a speaker from IDC. My name's Tom Schmidt, contributing editor of CIO Marketing Services, and I'll be the host of this webcast. Joining me is Gary Chen, Research Director, Software-Defined Compute at IDC. His research focuses on server virtualization, container infrastructure and management, and cloud system software. Hello, Gary.
Hi, Tom. Hi, everyone.
Also joining me is Chris Morgan, Vice President, Technical Marketing, Evangelism, and Strategic Initiatives at Red Hat, where he leads customer, field, and partner engagement, connecting Kubernetes, automation, and AI strategy to real outcomes across OpenShift, virtualization, and cloud-native stacks. Welcome, Chris.
Hey, Tom. It's good to be here.
And please welcome Venkat Ramakrishnan, Vice President and General Manager of the Portworx Business Unit at Pure Storage. Since joining Portworx, he's played a pivotal role in pioneering new categories of data management, protection, and services tailored for Kubernetes and containers. Hello, Venkat.
Hey, Tom. Thanks for having me. Good to meet you, Chris and Gary here.
We are going to have a lively discussion about how organizations are taking a fresh look at virtualization, something they may haven't done since they first deployed VMs. But first, Gary, can you kick things off by explaining just why organizations need to modernize their approach to virtualization?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Yeah, the virtualization market is going through a lot of change, right? And we've been, busy here at IDC doing a lot of inquiry with users about that. And yeah, and like you said, right, users are taking a fresh look at their virtualization and really the entire compute strategy. And, this is probably something they haven't really done, right, in like 15, 20 years since they first deployed virtualization. And, right, they just kind of like renewed it year after year and it kind of like evolved over time, but they never really kind of re-examine that initial decision. And so, I mean, obviously, like cost is a big part of this, and and virtualization cost is really like a whole separate and very intricate topic that we could talk forever about. But I'll just kind of say that I mean, virtualization cost is actually a fairly complicated model, right? There's a lot of factors to consider. It's kind of beyond just looking at like what the raw license cost is of right, X dollars per core. So I'll kind of leave it at that. But but I think like today's requirements around virtualization are just like so different than when virtualization just started. Like if you remember like what it was back then, right? I mean, one, there was like no concept of cloud, right? It was just starting, right? Enterprises weren't really adopting it. And today, right, you have that cloud model, now like a thing on-prem where most enterprises are trying to shift to like this cloud operating model. And kind of beyond just one cloud, right? For most enterprises, right, they're doing some form of multi-cloud. They're sourcing from multiple providers who all kind of do different things well. And then they're trying to like build this hybrid cloud and tie that all together with the multiple clouds and on-prem together. And then you also have, kind of today, a big, kind of increase in edge computing, right, where compute's kind of being pushed to the data center and cloud. So compute's kind of like just much more varied, much more spread out than what it was. And, you also have kind of like a lot of SaaS applications as well, which kind of just adds to the diversity. And I think the newest thing is that we really have this new form of compute, which is like containers, right? And so containers are built for modern workloads, right? They're cloud native, they're microservices based. And I think, as we enter the AI era, right, those types of modern workloads are obviously just going to grow tremendously. So I think, really when people look at kind of right virtualization transformation, they're really kind of looking at it through two lenses, right? One is kind of like, well, my existing workload base, which is sizable, right? Like, well, how compatible is it? What's the process going to be to migrate those things? And those are, those are challenging problems. And then the other part of it is kind of just like looking towards the future. Like, what are the workloads for tomorrow, right? What are the things that I want to modernize? I want to refactor, right? All the new deployments, right? Which could be AI. And I think that's where we've seen this interest in QVert really take off, right? It's been something that has really drawn a lot of inquiry and interest from people, and so that's what we're seeing the interest.
Excellent. Thanks for the overview, Gary. Chris and Venkat, your initial thoughts about Gary's presentation?
Fantastic. Chris, you want to take it first?
Sure. It's happy to hear Gary validate the messaging we've been pushing for a couple years now at Red Hat. We believed in KVM. It's been around for quite some time, and so it's been our hypervisor, and then the KubeVirt project. Gosh, at least 7 years or more. And then when we made the switch to OpenShift Vert, so it's very validating for me to hear it, and we see and hear the same thing, with what's happening out in the market. So it was great from my standpoint.
Yeah. Same here. You know, whatever, Gary, you were talking about, not just validation, it was music to my ears, right? It was fantastic, right? Because this is kind of what we have been evangelizing to our customers quite from the beginning of Portworx to kind of where we are today, right? Post acquisition by Pure. So containers are definitely like the modern runtime, but not all apps are going to be containerized right away. So you had a great point about, hey,
Mhm.
there's going to be mixed mode applications, right? So there's going to be some on VMs, some on containers, right? Now, runtimes are going to be obviously a little bit bifurcated, but and that's going to be like that for quite some time. It's like anything. Not every technology takes over, everything else, 100%, right? Unless we're talking about tape, and even tape is still around, right? Um, so when we look at it that way, like while these mixed mode applications remain, what is really needed, and especially with the advent of AI and ML, right? And especially the generative AI and agentic AI revolution we see, um, that enterprises are building their AI ML stacks closer to their data, right? Closer to where a lot of the data is, be it on cloud or on prem, because all of the agentic AI and generative AI stacks and machine learning stacks are built on Kubernetes anyway. They're built on containers, right? So, so the three secular trends make a lot of sense. Like you have AI ML, you have like this already app modernization in containers, but then with everything that happening around the industry, the virtualization also makes a lot of sense where it comes to Kubernetes, because Kubernetes, like you said, it's a very safe bet, right? I liked how you called it. It's a very safe bet because there's a strong community around Kubernetes, right? And and there's very good standardization around Kubernetes, and a lot of enterprise vendors have embraced it, and there are very very large deployments of Kubernetes are running at scale in production on prem and on cloud. So excellent points, Gary. I cannot be more aligned, with you and of course with Chris on our strategy together as Red Hat and Portworx.
Chris and Venkat, can you take us on a deeper dive into this evolving virtualization landscape? What is a modern application platform, and why should C-level executives care about this? Chris?
Sure. I think we've spoken about it a little bit, right? There's a lot of AI craziness right now. One could argue. I mean, there was even a recent study from MIT that there's a lot of projects happening, but 95% of them never leave the pilot stage. And so, where's all this money coming from? And so in addition to, the other market mover with, as Gary mentioned, people having to make a decision or looking at their virtualization choice, you kind of need to optimize your infrastructure as best you can from both a CapEx and OpEx perspective to free up some money to go and do this innovation. And then figure out kind of where things fit. And what we see, and it's especially why I like the partnership with Portworx, you know, doing the compute is simple enough, right? A VMDK like they're used to, or a QCal like works in the KVM and KubeVirt world is the same thing, but it's all the automation and processes that are in place, and then the storage and the networking. And so, the ecosystem is probably more vital than it's ever been when it comes to moving to a different platform. And so for me, that's really the depth when you're considering it, is how do I optimize both my CapEx and my OpEx, where I'm not running, two different environments with two different teams and then all the other inherent technical challenges versus creating the virtual machines as a first class citizen in the default platform. Remember, it's not a bolt on, it's literally at the API level. You're able to work with VMs the same way you do as containers. And so I think it's at least worth considering, but you need to look at it with the whole ecosystem focus.
Got it. Venkat?
Yeah, uh, as I was mentioning, the three secular trends is obviously what is governing a lot of these evolution in the market. You see, the one is obviously the biggest thing that's happening now is a pricing pressure on the market, especially on the traditional virtualization solutions, right? So you see a lot of our customers are looking for a better choice that can actually be uh, you know not for the next year, next 2 years, but for the next decade, right? I mean, when
Mhm.
large enterprises replatform and re-architect, they're not looking at, hey, how do I solve this for the next year or two, right? But how do I solve it for the next few decades, right? And and combine that with the already existing app modernization efforts, and then with Gen AI and all the machine learning stacks coming together, and there's no enterprise that is going to be operational without a AI strategy, right? If you're not
Mhm.
innovating, and if you're not innovating in AI, you're soon to be out executed by someone who
Mhm.
executes better with AI, right? So that is going to become an existential question for a lot of enterprises. And for enterprises, their existing data is where they can get the most returns out of, right? So data becomes key, right? And the Gen AI strategy is very, very important. And in order to drive a lot of ROI on the existing infrastructure and the spend, modernizing the application stack is even more important, right? And because you cannot take legacy stacks and expect to drive more efficiencies in your infrastructure with them. So modernizing the application stack, containerizing them is even more important. And Kubernetes has emerged as a very strong, platform for all three, right?
Mhm.
And with Portworx, kind of we enable data management for uh, modern apps, containers, with for Gen AI and AI ML stack, and as well as for KubeVirt and KubeVirt based solutions for virtualization, right? And we kind of underpin all three major
Mhm.
workloads. And partnering with Red Hat, we deliver that to our customers, where customers can standardize on Kubernetes as their platform of choice moving forward.
W Well, and specifically, it's OpenShift,
It is
right?
OpenShift.
OpenShift's been around for quite some time. We were, first contributors to Kubernetes alongside Google. Clayton Coleman probably had as many commits to Kubernetes by himself than the top 10 companies after that in the early years. And so for us, it's just a natural evolution, right? It's our distribution of Kubernetes, and OpenShift virtualization is our distribution of KubeVirt. And so what's in it for customers is that business aspect of it. While yes, the open source things are proven, my early years at Red Hat, we had to convince people open source was okay. And so it was another thing, Gary, that you were saying is making me smile. Folks don't question open source anymore. It's kind of amazing to see that. And so now it's around, well, how do you make open source ready for the enterprise? And then how do you bring the ecosystem along with it? And that to me is what's important.
Yeah, exactly. And what I can say is that customers look for uh, a not. I mean, of course, they want to underpin it on open source, but they look for a strong platform that's built for enterprise. In my opinion, that's OpenShift, right? And OpenShift answers a lot of questions for large enterprise customers on how to safely and securely deploy and scale their apps
Hmm.
across any environment.
Hmm.
Portworx helps obviously deliver data and storage management into OpenShift, and also plus it obfuscates and essentially virtualizes all of the underlying infrastructure, right? Where customers are able to deploy OpenShift freely on any storage infrastructure. It could be a SAN array based on Pure, it could be a third party SAN,
Hmm.
or it could even be on cloud providers, or it can just be on bare metal servers with local NVMe drives. But where OpenShift virtualizes all the apps, regardless of the runtimes, Portworx virtualizes all the underlying data management and storage providers and delivers a unified interface into OpenShift. And together, that's where we are seeing a lot of velocity with customers, adopting OpenShift to kind of modernize their not just their app modernization strategy, but their virtualization strategy as well.
Hmm.
And of course, with now OpenShift AI, there is tremendous partnership and velocity around, enterprises bringing their AI ML stacks
Hmm.
into Kubernetes and OpenShift and containers. Yeah.
Chris, we've touched on this, but can you elaborate on the major challenges that customers face as they explore virtualization alternatives?
Yeah, it's the primary one I would say the primary challenge is, man, it's baked into memory. You have folks that have been working on this platform for 2 decades. When they graduated college, it was their first job was a junior VMware admin, and so it's scary for them. I mean, it's you're in this world where, they're seeing AIs over here, and if you were a Red Hat Enterprise Linux admin on top of VMware today, you're wondering, "Man, I got this happening over here where we're considering an alternate virtual machine platform, and where do I fit into the AI stack?" And so it's really about creating the empathy and helping them understand, "Hey, we're on this journey with you, and this alternative understands where you are
Hmm.
and where we can help you get to." And so it's really about trying to make it more palpable. It's not a technical problem. I mean, yeah, there's always gonna be a technical problem, but it's usually around the people and process. So that
Hmm.
automation, right? The day 2 stuff, which is, I would say the next phase of what we're working on, in the space. And once we get that, then I think you'll see even faster adoption. It's because it's really a no-brainer, right,
Hmm.
to optimize it this way.
Excellent. Venkat?
Yeah. I mean, to Chris's point, culture,
Yeah.
right? I mean, how do we kind of help modernize enterprises where there's a culture that has been set for about a couple of decades, right?
Hmm.
So what we are working on, and we have done, I think, a pretty good job, Chris. I think, would you say, like, we have helped map most of those workflows so that it's seamless for customers who are VMware administrators who have had a couple of decades of administering VMware to seamlessly migrate into the OpenShift plus Portworx solution, so they have similar workflows, right? And so they, and the next step is to deliver the same or even better data experience when it comes to resiliency, failover, backups, business continuity, and disaster recovery experience. We're delivering similar or better experience and better SLAs together, right? Where customers are able to run this at scale, and meanwhile unifying all of the three strategies together, right? See, that's the cool thing that we are trying, we are accomplishing, is they have one platform that drives all of their three major initiatives: AIML, modern virtualization, and app modernization,
Hmm.
delivering similar or better experience to VMware and other similar platforms, so they don't have to retrain their entire workforce to kind of like go and run this at
Hmm.
scale, right? The other challenge we also help address is, which I alluded to in the previous segment, is I mean, almost if you go to most enterprises have this no vendor left behind policy, right? You could see a
Hmm.
proliferation of different SAN vendors, different arrays, different protocols, different interfaces, right? And so you have this legacy virtualization stack, a legacy application stack. You're modernizing that, but there's just so much baggage that remains there, right? Now, how do we? But that can drag an enterprise down, and we have seen this in real life, in real world use cases where it keeps them back from having to accelerate their journey, and where Portworx steps in and virtualizes all of that, right? So it's one interface, that's Kubernetes native, that's OpenShift native. In fact, I would say it's OpenShift native, and it enables customers to deploy applications in production without worrying about their underlying, legacy hardware or modern hardware like Pure's flash arrays, right? And then they're able to get the most out of their existing infrastructure, or the new infrastructure they're planning to buy. And that is another challenge we help address for customers as well. So that's kind of how you see this accelerating a lot further for the next few years.
Venkat and Chris, what can you tell us about joint customers who've started on this journey? How are they faring? Chris?
Well, I actually would love to hear this from Venkat because he's got some pretty direct interactions and does a good job of telling a story about a couple of them. Not to put you on the spot, Venkat, first, but
No
I think it would be
worries,
great.
Chris. I hate to take your airtime away, but I won't stop talking when it comes to our mutual customers and customer wins together that we have, right? So, first of all, I'll tell you, our partnership with Red Hat has been phenomenal, right? I mean, Red Hat and the team at Red Hat have been outstanding, as a partner, working with us as we modernize, these companies, our large mutual customers' journeys, right? Now, Red Hat has been a very great citizen of the community as well. They've been pretty neutral, but we have been working together in how do we make these customers successful and work backwards from these customers. Their win. A couple of very interesting cases, right? One is a very public story that Portworx Pure and then Red Hat published, and the customer was on main stage with us at our major event, Pure Accelerate in Vegas. Yeah, and to my point, here's a video of SiriusXM's Jeff Bethke talking about how Red Hat and Portworx are helping him transform his organization.
To Venkat's point about TCO, the cost to manage and the simplification, was that factoring into your decision to go this direction?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was most of it. Again, industry changes, new players show up, and you have to be able to move quickly to another platform at times. So depending on what that is, at the time, but it hits all those marks, right? It's low cost of ownership. It's on-prem. You can use it wherever you want, right? You can push it out to any one of your cloud providers. So it's kind of an integrated ecosystem, as far as you want to take it, as far out to the edge, or if you want to keep it inside the data center as well. So, and we utilize all portions of it, to be honest. I mean, and again, even from the storage point of view, you know what I mean? It's one of those things that fits.
Whereas SiriusXM, it's a very popular brand. Everybody knows SiriusXM. Chris, what's your favorite channel? Yeah. So, and SiriusXM is working on modernizing their entire application stack out of VMware into OpenShift, Red Hat OpenShift based virtualization, and Portworx as their data storage and management layer that virtualizes their entire storage stack. It could be Pure arrays, third-party arrays, plus delivering Kubernetes native virtualization into OpenShift. So their transition from VMware to Red Hat OpenShift is smooth, and is already most of the applications are online, and they're continuing to expand that footprint to drive all of their applications through Red Hat OpenShift virtualization and Portworx, right? And we have tremendous adoption across SiriusXM, across multiple business units, and including their obviously the satellite radio stations, the connected cars, and more. Right? There is I would probably anonymize this use case because we're still working with a customer. There's a very large automaker that has essentially migrated most of their workloads from VMware to Red Hat OpenShift virtualization and Portworx, running on top of, again, third-party arrays, Pure arrays, as well as third-party software-defined storage where Portworx virtualizes all of them, and has already migrated about 20 of their factories, and are successfully migrating more factories out of VMware and into Red Hat OpenShift Virtualization and Portworx, and are in the process of also modernizing their entire data center with Red Hat OpenShift, both virtualization and containers and Portworx, to migrate all the workloads out of VMware, right? And some very good use cases. We have a large telco that is preparing to go live on Red Hat OpenShift and Portworx for both virtualization as well as their core packet core networking stack as well. And where they're deploying racks and racks of servers, storage from Pure, Red Hat OpenShift, and Portworx as a software-defined storage layer to modernize their entire telco networking stack as well as their IT stack as well, right? So a lot of great giant wins. I mean, I can keep talking, and Chris knows I won't shut up. But these
Yeah.
stories are getting more and more interesting. We're looking at large banks, large financial institutions, large insurers, large retail, large manufacturing. The evolution is real, and that's actually more importantly, every large enterprise is taking this opportunity to revolutionize their application stack, to modernize their application stack, to build for the next 2 or 3 decades, right? And in order to stay competitive, that's what they have to do. They have to embrace Kubernetes as a platform. They have to partner with someone like Red Hat, who delivers the most mission critical, proven, enterprise grade Kubernetes platform that's OpenShift. And they're choosing a layer like Portworx, a software defined layer like Portworx that modernizes and virtualizes their storage, and and deliver this with all the day to SLAs that they need to bet their businesses on this infrastructure. And that's what we see customers do.
Yep. So I'll just say, you see the passion I was referring to, right, Tom? And I feel like we buried the lead and probably should have led with that, right? We're not doing this partnership because we're just nice people. We are, but it's customer demand. And as you heard in the examples Venkat talk about, it spans all the industries now, which to me is what's really exciting. Is we're hitting all these different verticals, and then because of the nature of virtualization, we're even getting into certain areas and customers that we weren't in before, right? And use cases as well. And so for me, the sign of a good platform, the academic definition I was always told, is when people start using it in ways you never imagined. And so we're seeing people adapt, and realizing that, hey, we've been doing things a certain way for 20 years. Maybe there is a better way that isn't as painful and still gets us to that solution. And so being able to work with a partner, that helps us span both of those environments and is philosophically aligned with us on that front, I think is what customers see, and why they've asked us to work together to help bring those worlds together as well.
Well put. Well, gentlemen, our time together is almost up. In a nutshell, what is the key takeaway you'd like our audience to draw from our discussion? Gary, let me start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that I would say is that when people are looking at what are their options today, I think it's really important not just to consider, right, like hey, what are the features and of the product that exists today, but kind of consider what the the roadmap is going to be, right, for the next 3 years. Because what I see is like there's going to be a lot of investment in this market, right, from a lot of different people, right? So the products are going to get a lot better. They're going to add a lot more things. They're really going to target, right, specific migrations and scenarios and different types of users, as well as kind of the ecosystem, right, kind of attached to virtualization, right, the storage and networking vendors and et cetera. So I think it's really important to keep that in mind, right? Like pick that platform, but know that there's going to be a lot more experience and tooling, and partners who have done a lot of different types of workloads and different types of use cases, and that is really going to, I think, unfold a lot over the next 3 years. So I think that's one thing to keep in mind, right? It's just there's a point in time that people are looking at what's immediately available, but it's really going to, I think, evolve a lot in 3 years, and there's going to be a lot of investment.
Good point. Venkat?
Yeah, thank you. I think a couple of key takeaways I would suggest is I think customers should look at, you know, build for the future, right? I mean, build not just for today, not for the short term, needs, but the architecture and how do you build an enterprise architecture that scales with your business needs, that can be mission critical, in your as you bring more workloads. That's key, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so architecture is, looking at the architecture, looking at what is it that'll help these workloads run in the data center, but be ready to go to cloud, be ready to go to regions that you haven't planned for, right? So, obviously something like Kubernetes is a great choice because it delivers that, portability of applications and data, right? And you need Portworx. Someone like Portworx delivers, this data portability and migration abilities, plus delivering all the data to services, right? So architecture is a key consideration for customers, and it should be looked into very closely before they make a choice, right? And the second thing is don't get uh, pushed into a corner on lock-ins, right? Customers get,
Mm-hmm.
most of the time a short-term choice will back the customer into a lock-in, right? So look into choices that do not lock you in, right? Again, the open standards based solutions like OpenShift and Portworx, these are all fairly open solutions, right? I mean, that are community driven, that have strong vendors behind them and drive
Mm-hmm.
no lock-in, right? But other platforms could lock them in, and then people go from frying pan to fire, right? I mean, you go from one vendor locked in solution that's closed to another vendor locked in solution that's even more closed, right? So de-risking the future deployment is to make sure that there's no lock-ins in these solutions. The third thing is ensure that that there's no islands of deployment, right? There's no storage islands, there is no VM island, there is no container island. Choose an architecture that, to a large extent, over the next couple of years, helps them drive and unify the control plane across their data center and cloud, right? Because that is where the industry is moving to, and that is what competitive organizations are doing, right? So the more islands are there, the more spread out their headcount is going to be, the more technical debt they're going to create in their organization, and that's going to bring their overall productivity and efficiency down, right? So that's the third consideration I would ask customers to think about.
Very good. Chris, you have the last word.
Oh, well, that's fun. Uh, you know, I I'll close it with this. 5 years ago, if, if any of us had bet that we would be talking about virtualization and Gen AI as these two things that are causing us to make decisions that maybe we didn't plan to make, everyone on this call would have lost a lot of money, right? I mean, it's almost surreal. And so I say that open is a mindset and a technology, and the saying only constant is change. And so what can you bet on that can be there regardless of the change?
Mm-hmm.
And we've always believed that at Red Hat, right? That's why we sell subscriptions and not licenses, right? You're never locked in with us. You always have choice. And so when I look at OpenShift virtualization specifically, and where we're going and helping bring some comfort in a time of maybe where there's not a lot of comfort. Let's be honest, right? There's some major things happening. We want to make sure that you're not alone is the first thing, and we want to deliver value the same way we always have. We're going to continue delivering it this way. It's why, again, I love the fact that customers drove this partnership with Portworx, and it's driving the use cases. Continue doing that, and continue pushing the limits with us, and we'll continue to be there with you.
Very good. Well, that's about all the time we have for today's webcast. I want to give a big thanks to our speakers, Gary Chen of IDC, Venkat Ramakrishnan of Portworx, and Chris Morgan of Red Hat for sharing their insights and expertise with us today. Thanks especially to you, our viewers, for tuning in. Please be sure to check out the resource list for some valuable Red Hat and Portworx information to download. For Red Hat, Portworx, and CIO.com, I'm Tom Schmidt.